The first love my husband had never truly forgotten returned to Seattle exactly 1 week before New Year's Eve. I did not hear about it from my husband. I heard it from his younger sister. Sophie Cole was standing beside the champagne bar at the Cole family's year-end party, laughing with 3 friends loudly enough that she did not even bother lowering her voice. "Celeste is back. I guess someone is finally going to have to give the position back," one of the girls asked. "Seriously? I thought that was just gossip." "No. My mother saw her 2 days ago. Adrian knows too." "So your sister-in-law—" Sophie turned and looked at me. Her gaze traveled from my hair to my dress, and then she smiled. 3 years married and she still hasn't managed to have a baby. If I were her, I'd know when it was time to leave. My fingers tightened around the stem of my glass. Not because I was surprised. The name Celeste Monroe had existed inside my marriage much longer than the woman herself had been physically present in our lives. I had known before I married Adrian that he had once loved her. They had dated in college. After graduation, Celeste accepted a job in London and later moved to Paris. They broke up because of the distance, or at least that was what Adrian had told me. Back then, I believed a relationship divided by an ocean was simply a finished chapter. 3 years as Adrian's wife taught me something else. Some people can leave your life without ever leaving the memory of the person sleeping beside you. I kept holding my champagne, kept my back straight. I did not walk over and ask Sophie what she meant, not because it did not hurt, because I refused to let that room see me hurt. The party was being held at the Cole family's lakefront home overlooking Lake Washington. Golden lights ran along the windows. A jazz trio played near the fireplace. Waiters moved through the room with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Outside, Seattle rain fell so lightly it looked like mist, leaving the stone steps glossy. I had helped Diane Cole choose the florist for the evening. I had personally checked the menu because Adrian's aunt was allergic to shellfish. I reminded the caterer to prepare gluten-free dishes for one of his cousins. In 3 years as a daughter-in-law, I had never allowed a major Cole family holiday to happen without some part of my work behind it. And that night, I stood there, listening to my sister-in-law say I would soon have to give my position back. "Eleanor." Diane's voice came from behind me. I turned. My mother-in-law wore a black dress and a diamond necklace she reserved for events she described as important enough that people should remember you. Diane looked at me. "I was just speaking to Adrian," she said, loudly enough for Sophie and the people nearby to hear. "He'll be 36 next year." I already knew what was coming. She had never missed an opportunity to remind me. 3 years of marriage and still no child, Diane said. "A family cannot wait forever." I looked at her. Having children is something between Adrian and me. Between husband and wife? She lifted one eyebrow. "Celeste is back." A small pocket of silence formed around us. Nobody turned to stare, but I knew at least half the people nearby were listening. I asked, "Are you suggesting I get divorced at your New Year's Eve party?" Diane took a sip of wine. "I'm simply saying a woman should know when to preserve her dignity. 3 years earlier, I had genuinely wanted this woman to like me. I remembered her birthday, sent flowers for Mother's Day, spent an entire afternoon at the hospital after her knee replacement, organized an anniversary dinner for her and Adrian's father. Every time Diane remained cold, I told myself I only needed to give it more time. I had used the same strategy with my husband. More time, more patience, a little more sacrifice. One day, they would see me. That night, I finally understood. Nobody loves you more just because you make yourself easier to love. I raised my glass. "Thank you for the advice." Diane paused. Perhaps she had been expecting an argument. I walked away first. At that exact moment, the front door opened. Adrian came in. Black tuxedo. A few drops of rain still on his shoulders. His hair damp. After 3 years of marriage, I could still admit that Adrian Cole was the kind of man who made a room look up without realizing it. I had loved him since I was 25. I had even loved his silences, which I used to mistake for depth. Later, I learned that silence did not always mean someone carried too much inside. Sometimes it simply meant they had nothing they wanted to say to you. I walked over. Out of habit, I slipped my arm through his. "You're late." Adrian glanced down at my hand. He did not pull away. He did not pull away. He did not place his hand over mine either. "I had a call." "With Celeste?" Something changed in his eyes. Barely. It was enough. I smiled. "Want a drink?" "No?" "Then I will." I took another glass of champagne from a waiter's tray. Sophie and her friends were still watching. Maybe they were waiting for me to ask Adrian, "Do you still love her? What does she have that I don't? Are you going to leave me?" I did not ask. I had spent 3 years asking those questions with my actions. The answer was standing directly in front of me. I finished the champagne. "Happy New Year, Adrian." Then I slipped my arm away and went upstairs. I sat at my vanity in our bedroom and removed the earrings my mother had sent me at the beginning of the month. One, then the other. I was placing them in their box when the door opened. Adrian came in. He locked the door. He did not ask what his mother had said to me. He did not ask whether Sophie had embarrassed me. He simply placed a cream-colored folder in front of me. Then a check. I looked at him through the mirror. "What is this?" "Draft settlement." "You want a divorce?" Adrian stood behind me. After a moment, he said, "Yes." I turned the chair around. "Because of Celeste?" He hesitated, then nodded. "She just came back." "I know." "Eleanor, she came back, so you want to divorce me." "I don't want to keep lying to you." I almost laughed. "What have the last 3 years been?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "I tried. Tried to love me?" He did not answer. That was enough. I opened the folder. According to Adrian's lawyer's proposal, we would file a joint petition. The prenuptial agreement we had signed before marriage would remain in place. I could stay in the house for 6 months if I wanted. The check beside the folder was for $2 million. "What is this?" "For you." "For what?" "You haven't worked full-time in 3 years. I don't want you struggling after you leave." I looked at the number. 2 million. Large enough for the Cole family to believe they were being generous. Large enough that any outsider might think I should be grateful. I pushed the check back. "Keep it." Adrian frowned. "Don't be proud." "It isn't pride." "Then why?" I removed my wedding ring, placed it on top of the check. "Because I don't want it." Adrian stared at the ring. For the first time that night, the certainty on his face cracked. "You're agreeing to the divorce that quickly? What am I supposed to do? Get on my knees and beg you not to choose Celeste?" "I didn't say that." "You had papers prepared." He was silent. I stood. "My attorney will review everything. If it matches the prenup and the law, I'll sign." "You have an attorney?" "I had independent counsel when I signed the prenup. Marriage did not make me legally incompetent." Adrian looked at me as if he had discovered something about his wife that he had never bothered to notice. I went to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, only necessary clothes, my laptop, passport, personal records, a small wooden box. I did not take paintings. I did not take jewelry Adrian had given me. I did not carry anything from that house simply to prove I had once been its mistress. Adrian stood in the doorway. "You're leaving now?" "Yes." "Tonight?" "You chose tonight to ask for a divorce." "I can stay at a hotel." "No need. The house is yours." I zipped the suitcase. As I walked past him, Adrian said, "Eleanor." I stopped. "Did you ever really love me?" That question hurt more than anything Sophie or Diane had said. I turned. 8 years? I said. "I loved you for almost 8 years. Adrian froze. "Then how can you—" "Because loving someone does not mean humiliating yourself after they have already chosen." I walked out. On the back staircase, Sophie saw my suitcase. She smirked. "That fast?" I looked at her. I don't like staying in places where people have already cleared room for the replacement. Her expression hardened. I walked past. It was still raining outside. I put my suitcase in the trunk and sat behind the wheel for nearly a minute. The party continued behind the glass. Diane was probably explaining to guests that this was a private family matter. Sophie was likely texting her friends. Adrian might have been calling Celeste. I did not know. I no longer wanted to know. I took out my phone, called my brother. He answered on the second ring. "Ellie? I'm getting divorced." There were exactly 2 seconds of silence. "Where are you?" "Still at Adrian's house." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "I'm coming to get you." "No." "Eleanor, I can drive." He was quiet. Then asked, "Where are you going?" I looked at the brightly lit house behind me. "Home." He did not ask which home. He only said, "Okay, I'll wait." I rested my hands on the steering wheel. 3 years earlier, I had told him one thing. If this marriage could not become a real life, I would come home. That night, I finally kept my promise. I started the car. I had no idea that Adrian Cole would spend a very long time trying to understand what he had lost. I also did not know that the people who had watched me leave with pity would soon look at me very differently. But none of that needed to happen yet. First, I only wanted to go home. 40 minutes later, I turned off the main road and into a narrow drive lined with cedar trees. The iron gate ahead opened before I touched the intercom. The guard in the booth recognized my license plate and stood. "Welcome home, Ms. Eleanor." I paused. It had been 3 years since anyone there had called me that. The road wound through the trees. I had forgotten how long it was. After a curve, the house appeared. Not a palace, no towering columns, no stone lions. Just a broad, low home beside the lake, warm light spilling through the windows. My mother was already waiting on the steps, even though it was nearly midnight. Before the car had fully stopped, she came down. The moment I opened the door, she hugged me tightly. "You've lost weight." 4 words. Not, "I told you so." Not, "How much did he give you?" Not, "Who is Celeste?" I nearly cried. My father stood behind her. He placed one hand on my shoulder. "You're home. That's enough." Alexander came out last. He looked at the suitcase. "Only one? I don't need the rest." He picked it up. "Do you want tomorrow off, or are you coming with me?" I looked at him. "Where?" Alexander smiled. "Have you really forgotten the way?" I was about to ask more when my mother interrupted. "She just got divorced." Alexander said, "She got divorced. She didn't lose the ability to read a spreadsheet." My father nodded. 8 o'clock. 8:30, my mother and I said together. Alexander laughed. So did I. At that point, anyone listening to this story still would not have known who my family really was. The truth was that for 3 years, most of the Cole family had not known either. They knew I came from money, knew my father invested, knew my brother worked in business, knew I was not poor. That was all. Adrian had asked a few times. I always answered vaguely, partly because my family had lived privately for years, partly because I once wanted my marriage to survive without their name, their money, or their status inside it. I thought that if I did not bring any of those things into the Cole household, Adrian would see only Eleanor. In the end, he still looked somewhere else. The next morning, I finally remembered exactly what I had left behind to marry him. The next morning, I woke in my old bedroom. My mother had changed very little. The bookshelf still held the finance and urban economics textbooks I had left behind. On the desk sat my graduation photo, a picture of Alexander and me in Yellowstone, and one of the whole family at the marina when I was 23. After 3 years in Adrian's house, I had grown used to being called Mrs. Cole. Here, everything reminded me that I had once had a life of my own. At 8:20, I went downstairs. My father was reading the Wall Street Journal on his tablet. Alexander was checking email. My mother set eggs, toast, and coffee in front of me. "Nobody discusses divorce while eating," she announced. I looked at her. "Afraid I'll cry? I'm afraid your father will start talking valuation before you finish breakfast." My father looked up. "I haven't said anything," Alexander said. "He sent me 3 files at 6:10. My mother set down a plate harder than necessary. "Everyone be quiet." I laughed. At 8:50, I was in Alexander's car. He did not use a driver. Just the two of us. I watched the city through the window. "You still haven't asked anything about Adrian. Do you want me to?" "No. Then I won't." "You're not curious?" Alexander glanced at me. "Very, but if you want to tell me, you will." I was quiet for a moment. Celeste Monroe came back. I know the name. He asked for a divorce because of her. Alexander did not react immediately. "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Don't use that answer with me." I looked out the window. "Not completely, but enough to work." He nodded. About 10 minutes later, the car turned into Bellevue. A tall glass building rose ahead of us. On its front was a logo made of 3 silver lines forming a mountain ridge. Meridian Crest Holdings. I stared at the name. It had been 3 years since I walked through those doors. Alexander parked in a private garage. I asked, "You still kept my access badge active?" "You're still in the system." Dad never deleted me? He wanted to. Mom wouldn't let him. I smiled. The elevator took us to the 17th floor. When the doors opened, the receptionist looked at me for a second and then stood abruptly. "Ms. Caldwell?" Several people nearby turned. Some recognized me, some did not. Alexander kept walking. I followed. Behind reception, the Meridian Crest logo was mounted on the wall. Below it, industrial real estate, infrastructure, logistics, digital assets. That was when the secret truly began to open. My father, Richard Caldwell, was the founder and executive chairman of Meridian Crest Holdings. The company was private, no ticker symbol, no public shareholder meetings. But over 3 decades, Meridian Crest had acquired and developed distribution parks, cold storage facilities, data centers, intermodal logistics sites, industrial land, and infrastructure investments across Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia. Assets sat inside dozens of LLCs, joint ventures, and family holding entities. The Caldwell name rarely appeared next to the corporate brand because my father had deliberately separated family identity from company identity. It started when Alexander was 11. A van once followed his school car. Nobody was successfully kidnapped. The family driver noticed, changed routes, and called the police. That was enough for my father to change how we lived. Our photographs disappeared from foundation websites. School addresses were kept private. No family profiles. No glossy articles about young heirs. In college, I drove an old Subaru, lived with a roommate, did my own laundry. Friends knew my father worked in real estate. Very few knew the scale. Adrian had been the same. He knew I came from a wealthy family. Knew Alexander ran a business. But I had never brought him to a board event. Never explained the trust structure. Never told him I had worked here for nearly 5 years. I wanted him to marry Eleanor, not Meridian Crest. Maybe I had gone too far in the opposite direction. Alexander opened the door to a small conference room. A thick file sat on the table. "Welcome back." I looked at him. "This is your idea of being emotional? This is my version of love." I pulled the file toward me. The project name, Cascadia South Industrial Campus, roughly 118 acres south of Tacoma, near Interstate 5 and a freight rail line. Meridian Crest held an option to buy part of the property. The old plan included distribution warehouses, cold chain logistics, light manufacturing, a cluster for clean tech suppliers. The project had 3 major problems. Infrastructure costs had risen. Part of the wetlands had not been fully evaluated. The capital partner had backed out after interest rates rose. Alexander said, "The option expires in 9 months. What do you want me to do?" "Re-underwrite everything. If it still makes sense, rebuild the capital stack and partner strategy. If it doesn't, recommend we walk." "Do I have a team?" "Yes." "Decision authority?" "Enough to lead. Not enough to commit tens of millions without committee approval." "Deadline?" 3 weeks for an investment memo." I looked at him. "You're testing me." "Of course. And if I fail?" "Then you fail. We are not putting $120 million into a deal to repair your self-esteem after a divorce." I laughed. That was exactly what I needed. No pity. No revenge on my behalf. Nobody said, "Adrian will regret it when he finds out how rich you are." Alexander only said, "Here is a project. Do the work." My mother had wanted me to return to the company even before I married. My father never forced me. 3 years earlier, I had told them both, "Let me try the life I chose. If I come back one day, I don't want a chair handed to me just because I'm your daughter." My father had said, "I'll remember that." He did. That afternoon, my former attorney, Melissa Grant, called. Adrian had sent over the draft settlement. Our prenup was clear. Property owned before marriage remained separate property. Family trusts and ownership interests did not become community property simply because of marriage. Assets accumulated jointly during the marriage would be handled under Washington law and the agreement. We had no children. No major shared debt. The house had been Adrian's before marriage. Melissa said, "Washington requires at least 90 days from filing and service before the dissolution can be finalized." "I know. Do not accept the $2 million check outside the formal agreement." I wasn't planning to. Not because you don't need it, because if you accept it, the terms need to be explicit. I understand. And we need to determine what portion of Adrian's stock units and bonuses during the marriage may be community property. I don't want to fight. Following the law is not a fight. I looked at the project model on my screen. 3 years earlier, I had been terrified Adrian might think I wanted his money. Now that fear sounded childish. "Keep it clean," I said. "No more, no less." Good. 2 days later, Diane called. I stared at her name for a long time before answering. Eleanor, I hear you hired a lawyer. I've had a lawyer since the prenup. Adrian wants to handle this decently. So do I. I hope you won't let outsiders make a simple matter complicated. A divorce attorney is not an outsider in a divorce. Diane paused, then said, In any case, the Cole family did not mistreat you for 3 years. I looked at an email from a utility consultant. Are you calling to remind me what I owe you? I'm stating a fact. Adrian gave you a very good life. And do you remember what I did for the Cole family? That was what a wife was supposed to do. I understood. There was nothing else to say. Diane continued. Celeste suits Adrian better. She works in the same world. She understands professional pressure. You've been at home for 3 years. I'm at the office. She stopped. What office? I looked at the Meridian Crest logo on the folder beside me. It doesn't matter. Eleanor? I have a meeting. I ended the call. I did not want the reveal to happen over the phone. I did not need Diane gasping immediately. The bigger truth was not that she would eventually learn who I was. It was what I could do after leaving the marriage. That afternoon, Julian Mercer walked into the conference room. He had just come from the site. Mud still marked his shoes. His coat was folded over one arm. Julian was CEO of Mercer Infrastructure Partners, an industrial infrastructure investment and development company. I knew him from college. We had never been close. In fact, I had disliked him back then. Julian and Adrian had competed in a case competition. Adrian said Julian was arrogant and liked winning through his network. I believed Adrian. When you love someone, you often borrow their eyes to judge other people. Julian looked at me for a second. Eleanor Caldwell. Julian Mercer. I heard Meridian Crest changed project leads. Didn't expect it to be you. Disappointed? The opposite. He sat. Opened a site map. I visited this morning. The wetlands won't kill the deal. Utility might. Why? The old power extension quote is useless. If you keep the cold storage component, load requirements go up. Your number? At least 14 million more. My team has 11. Your team is using an 8-month-old quote. I looked toward the analyst. She nodded, slightly embarrassed. Julian did not try to humiliate me. He simply slid over the updated source material. I'll send the backup. Good. Is Mercer's proposal still valid? I asked. Depends on how you revise the deal. Ownership? 40% equity if we come in as co-developer. I thought you were here to save the project, not buy it cheap. Julian smiled. You're still the same. So are you. You haven't heard all the terms. Then give me all of them. 2 hours later, I had 6 pages of notes. Julian stood. Coffee? No. Dinner? No. Business dinner? Still no. He raised both hands. Fine. At the door, he turned back. I heard about you and Cole. My face cooled. Julian immediately added, I'm not commenting. I only want you to know this deal has nothing to do with that. If I think the project is bad, I still walk. Good. And if you're wrong, I'll still say so. Even better. He nodded. Then we can work. The door closed. I sat still for a few seconds. For the first time in a long while, a man had not asked whether I was hurt, whether I regretted leaving, or whether I planned to go back to my husband. He had only said, if you're wrong, I'll tell you. Strangely enough, that made me feel respected. The first 3 weeks on the project reminded me why I had once loved the work. Not because of investor dinners, Most of it was spreadsheets, maps, emails, calls with the utility district, geotechnical reports, wetland delineation, traffic studies, a 40-minute argument about whether Phase 1 should contain 540,000 or 430,000 square feet of warehouse space. I slept less. But this kind of exhaustion had a shape. I knew exactly what I was tired from. It was not like lying beside Adrian at night and wondering who he was thinking about. By the second week, we discovered that the old model had materially underestimated stormwater costs. If we kept the original design, return on cost fell below the investment committee's threshold. Priya, the youngest analyst on the team, said, "We could reduce contingency from 10% to 7%. I asked, "If this were your own money, would you use 7%? She was quiet. "No." "Then use 10. The board won't like it. The board is not entitled to pretty numbers." She nodded. That afternoon, Alexander called me into his office. "The IRR got worse." "I know. You planning to make it look nicer?" "No." He looked at me. There had been a time when I was very good at making things look easier so other people could feel comfortable. In marriage, at dinner, inside silence. I did not want to bring that habit back to work. "The project still works," I said, "but we need to shrink Phase 1, lock in a utility contribution before closing, and find an anchor tenant." "Probability? Not high enough to buy the land yet." "Then don't buy it." "I'll request an option extension." Alexander nodded. Nobody told me I had to make the project succeed at any cost. That was what kept me calm. I was allowed to conclude that a project was not worth pursuing. If the data led there. At the same time, our divorce petition was filed. Adrian and I chose mediation. We had no children, so there was no custody issue. The prenup simplified a great deal. Melissa determined that part of the bonuses and stock units Adrian received during the marriage had potential community property components. Adrian proposed that I waive all of it in exchange for $2 million in cash. I rejected that structure. Not because I wanted more. I simply did not like the idea that he could pay a number and make me disappear. Eventually, both sides agreed to independent valuation. Each of us kept separate property under the prenup. Community accounts were divided as of the agreed statement date. Nobody had to win. At mediation, Adrian looked at me as though he were seeing a stranger. I wore a navy suit. My laptop was full of comments. He asked, "You really went back to work? I thought you knew." "At Meridian Crest?" "Yes." "Your family's company?" "Yes." "I didn't know you worked there before." "I told you I worked in development before we married. I thought it was for another firm. I never corrected you." Adrian frowned. "Why?" "I wanted the marriage to exist without my family behind it." "You didn't trust me?" "I trusted too many other things." The mediator returned. The conversation ended. Afterward, Adrian stood near the elevators. "Celeste wants to see you." "Why?" "She thinks there's a misunderstanding between the two of you." "I don't have a misunderstanding with her." "Eleanor, I'm divorcing you, not Celeste." The elevator opened. Adrian held the door. "You changed very quickly." I looked at him. "No, you simply never looked closely." The doors closed. About a month later, I saw Celeste at a Pacific Northwest Design Council reception. Meridian Crest was a sponsor. Mercer Infrastructure also had a table. Celeste was a creative director for a luxury hospitality firm that had recently opened a Seattle office. I was speaking with Priya when I heard, "Eleanor?" Celeste was still very beautiful. Black hair cut to her shoulders. Ivory dress. A smile calibrated to be just warm enough. Celeste. It's been a long time. Yes. She looked at my name badge. Eleanor Caldwell, Meridian Crest Holdings. Her eyes lingered. You work here? Yes. Adrian said you stopped working years ago. I came back. An architect in Celeste's group stepped over. Ms. Caldwell, you're with the Cascadia South team, right? We're evaluating it. Richard Caldwell is your father? Yes. Celeste looked at me. I saw the moment she connected the pieces. Not some exaggerated gasp. Just the realization that I was not a woman living off Adrian the way she had apparently assumed. I said nothing more. Julian appeared. Eleanor, the city consultant is looking for you. He looked at Celeste. Celeste Monroe? Julian Mercer. They knew each other the way people in the same industry knew names. Julian turned to me. Coming? Of course. We walked away. After a minute, Julian asked, That was the one? The one what? The one who came back. I hate that industry gossip moves faster than permitting. If you don't want to talk about it, I won't ask. I don't. Okay. He switched to utility issues. I was grateful. Cascadia South began to look more viable when the utility district confirmed it could expand the substation through a cost-sharing arrangement if we committed to a clear load schedule. The wetlands were not as bad as the old report suggested either. About 13 acres had to remain fully protected. The road alignment changed. The buildable area still worked. The hardest problem was the anchor tenant. I contacted 6 companies. 3 declined. One thought the site was too far south of Seattle. One demanded rent concessions that would have nearly erased the project's margin. The 6th, Northline Medical Supply, needed a distribution hub for Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. They were interested in the cold chain component, but they wanted occupancy in 22 months. The construction team said that was extremely tight. Julian said, Possible if permitting doesn't slip. I asked, Will you guarantee that? No. Then don't sell the schedule like certainty. He smiled. You're terrible at sales. I'm not in sales. That explains it. We proposed 24 months with capped liquidated damages if delays were caused by the developer. Northline agreed to continue negotiations. In week 5, Julian sent a revised capital proposal. Mercer reduced its equity ask from 40% to 32%. Meridian Crest retained control. Mercer received approval rights when the budget exceeded defined thresholds. I objected to several veto provisions. Julian did not give them up immediately. We argued for 2 days. In the end, both sides moved. Nobody let me win. That was the first time I began to believe that a relationship between a man and a woman could contain disagreement without requiring one person to become smaller. On the night of the investment committee review, my father sat at the far end of the table. He barely spoke. One committee member asked, The tenant LOI is not binding. Why close the land option now? I answered, We are not asking to close. We are asking to pay $450,000 for a 60-day extension so we can complete the tenant lease, utility agreement, and environmental review. If Northline walks, we don't close. Then we lose $450,000. Yes. You're comfortable losing that? $450,000 is the cost of avoiding more than $30 million of equity in a project that has not been sufficiently de-risked. The room was quiet. The committee approved the extension. It did not approve the full acquisition. I walked into the hall. Alexander followed. Congratulations. We only bought 60 more days. I'm congratulating you because nobody laughed you out of the room. I elbowed him. My phone vibrated. Adrian. I almost ignored it. He called again. I answered. What is it? Where are you? At the office. At 9 at night? Yes. I'm downstairs. I walked to the window. A familiar Porsche was parked near the entrance. What are you doing here? I want to talk. For legal issues, call Melissa. It's not legal. I was exhausted. But I went down. Adrian stood beside his car. I saw Celeste at the reception, he said. I know. She said you were there with Julian. I was there with my team. You and Julian are working together? Yes. He always liked you. I looked at Adrian. You came here to tell me that? You knew he liked you? I don't care. I do. I laughed because I was too tired not to. You no longer have that right. We're not officially divorced yet. You're the one who filed because Celeste came back. He went silent. I said, if you're worried Julian is exploiting a business relationship, thank you. I have counsel, committee oversight, and conflict policies. If you're jealous, that is your problem. Eleanor, I just finished a 5-hour meeting. He looked at me, then said quietly, I'm not as happy as I thought I'd be. I stopped. Then work that out with the person you chose. I went back inside. I did not turn around. 3 weeks later, Northline signed the lease term sheet. It was not fully binding, but it was enough for the lender and equity partner to keep underwriting. The utility agreement was almost finished. Wetland delineation was complete. We were moving closer to closing. That same week, the University of Washington held a scholarship gala for the Built Environment program. Meridian Crest bought a table. I did not want to go. Alexander made me. You need to see donors, faculty, and people in the industry. I can meet them in the office. No, sometimes business means dressing nicely and having conversations without a spreadsheet. My mother chose a dark blue dress from a local Seattle designer. No visible logo. No sequins. I wore my grandmother's earrings. Julian was there with Mercer's table. Adrian came with Celeste because Cole Urban Ventures was a donor. Seattle was large enough that I did not have to see my ex every day. The real estate world was small enough that eventually everyone ended up in the same ballroom. I was talking to an old professor when Celeste approached. Beautiful dress. Thank you. I thought for a gala like this you'd wear couture. I like this. She glanced at the program. The designer was small. I've never heard of them. That's okay. Celeste smiled. Eleanor, I understand now how private you really are. I don't think of myself as private. I just don't advertise. Adrian didn't know much about Meridian Crest either. I think that's something you should discuss with Adrian. He's very confused. I'm not his therapist. Celeste's expression cooled. You know he still asks about you. I don't ask about him. He divorced you because of me. Yes. But every time Julian's name appears near yours, he loses his mind. I set down my sparkling water. Celeste, if you need me to confirm that Adrian chose you, I'll confirm it. He did. If that choice still doesn't make you feel secure, the problem is not me. She said nothing. I left before it became a scene. The auction started after dinner. I had donated a 1911 topographic map of Seattle that my father bought years earlier. The opening bid was $2,000. An alumnus offered $3,000. Julian $5,000. Someone else $7,500. Julian $10,000. He eventually bought it for $14,000. Not an absurd amount, but more than the map's material value. Later, the auctioneer brought out a set of vintage architectural drawings that I liked. I bid 4,000. Julian raised his paddle too. I turned toward him. He smiled. I bid 5. He bid 6. I bid 7. He stopped. I won. After dinner, Julian said, I thought you'd let me buy it and give it to you. I can buy things for myself. I know. Then why bid? I wanted to see whether you actually liked it. You spent $6,000 to test that? The money goes to scholarships. I shook my head. You're very annoying. Thank you. Adrian stood not far away. I knew he was watching. When I went to collect my coat, he stopped me in the hallway. Are you and Julian dating? No. Adrian exhaled. Then why did he buy something I donated? Ask him. Eleanor. I answered you. He looked at me for a long time. Celeste and I are not what I thought. I pulled on my coat. You should tell her. I'm telling you. Why? Because I think I made a mistake. I stood still. That was the first time he said it plainly. No more. I'm not happy. No more. Julian likes you. Just, I was wrong. There had been a time when those words could have made me cry. Now they arrived after the deadline. Maybe, I said. That's all? What do you want me to do? Cancel the divorce so you can test your feelings again? I don't know. Then when you do, tell your lawyer. I know what I want. You want Julian? I want my work. I want to stop explaining every decision through a man. Adrian lowered his head. I'm sorry. I heard you. Do you forgive me? Forgiveness does not change my decision. I walked away. The next day, a photograph from the gala appeared in a local business magazine. I stood beside Alexander and my father. The caption said only, Richard Caldwell with son Alexander Caldwell and daughter Eleanor Caldwell, project lead at Meridian Crest Holdings. One line. But for some people in the industry, it was the first time my name and my father's had appeared together publicly. Sophie Cole texted, I didn't know you were Richard Caldwell's daughter. I replied, That has nothing to do with how your family treated me before. She did not answer. Diane called. I ignored it. She called again. I answered. Eleanor, could we have lunch? Why? I'd like to talk. The divorce is being handled through counsel. Not about the divorce. About us. I was quiet. Diane said, I admit there may have been some misunderstandings before. I thought of her saying the family could not wait forever for a woman who might not be able to have children. What misunderstandings? She could not say it. So I helped her. You mean when you implied I was infertile, even though Adrian and I had never tried to conceive? Diane coughed. Adrian and I had postponed children because the marriage was unstable. I used contraception. I had undergone preconception screening and had no significant issue. Adrian knew. Diane did not because it was none of her business. I was only worried about the family, she said. You can worry without insulting me. I'm sorry. I accept the apology. So lunch? No. Eleanor? Diane, if you want to repair our relationship immediately after seeing my father's name next to mine in a magazine, lunch is not going to make the apology more believable. She went quiet. I ended the call. I did not feel triumphant, only lighter. There had been a time when I needed Diane to acknowledge that I was worthy of being her daughter-in-law. I no longer needed that title. With the 60-day extension nearly over, Northline signed a conditional lease subject to construction financing and permitting. Mercer signed the joint venture at 30% equity. Meridian Crest retained control. We closed the land option 2 days before the deadline. Total Phase 1 equity commitment exceeded $34 million. It was not money my father privately handed me. The investment committee approved it. The lender conducted independent underwriting. Mercer committed capital. A mistake large enough would still cost both companies real money. After closing, Alexander handed me a glass of champagne in the conference room. "You survived. Don't say it like I came out of surgery. Dad's investment committee is close enough." My father walked in. "I heard that." Alexander drank. My father looked at me. "Board meeting next week." "I know. I'm going to recommend appointing you Senior Vice President. Development." I froze. The project only closed land. "You are not being promoted because the project is finished. You are being promoted because of how you handled it." "What about succession?" "Not yet." I smiled. "Good." He looked surprised. "Good? If you announce me as successor right now, everyone will think all I had to do was get divorced and come home to receive a title," Alexander said. "They'll think that anyway. I don't control what people think. I control whether I have an answer." My father nodded. "Then finish the work." I was appointed Senior Vice President at the beginning of the next quarter. The internal announcement was 3 paragraphs long. No oversized portrait. No speech about the chairman's daughter returning home. At my first meeting with 6 department heads, a man almost 20 years older than me asked, "Ms. Caldwell, should we report to you because of the title or because of the project?" I looked at him. "Because of the title. Whether you trust my decisions is something I still have to earn." He nodded. I knew the question would travel. I also knew the answer could not be proven in one day. Cascadia South entered permitting. Traffic impact analysis. Drainage planning. Habitat mitigation. Fire district negotiations. North Line changed part of its cold storage requirements after acquiring a smaller distributor. The construction budget rose by $6.8 million. Julian and I argued over who should absorb the escalation. Mercer said tenant-driven changes should be passed through. My team argued that developer risk belonged inside contingency. In the end, we followed the formula already written into the JV. Nobody threw documents. Nobody walked out. I started liking Julian, not because of the auction map, not because he was wealthy, not because he was the opposite of Adrian. I liked the way he prepared before disagreeing. He read the memo, knew the numbers, never lowered my voice for me so he could preserve his authority. Once, during a meeting with a contractor, the man kept answering Julian, even though I was the one asking the questions. The 3rd time it happened, Julian said, "Eleanor asked you. Answer her." That was all. No performance. No heroic intervention. No, "I'll handle this for you." He simply returned the authority to the correct place. I remembered that longer than every bouquet Adrian had ever sent. On day 93, after the petition was filed, Melissa called. "The court can enter the final decree if both sides sign the revised findings." I looked at the calendar. 3 months. A short enough period for nearly 3 years of marriage to become a PDF with electronic signatures. Adrian did not contest the final settlement. The original $2 million payment disappeared. Community assets were divided by valuation. Each of us kept separate property under the prenup. No spousal maintenance. No child issues. I signed that morning. That afternoon, the decree was entered. The marriage is dissolved. I read the line while a civil engineer was talking about a culvert. I put my phone away, stayed on the call. Only that evening did I walk alone by the lake. I did not cry, but I thought about the 25-year-old woman who had once believed that if she loved long enough, someone would eventually turn and look at her. I was not angry at her. She had simply learned an expensive lesson. Adrian called around 10. I answered. "It's final," he said. "Yes. I just got it." "Yes. Are you okay?" "I'm okay." He laughed quietly. I hate that answer now. When I said I wasn't okay before, you never knew what to do either. He went silent. After a while, "Celeste and I are over. I'm sorry." "You're not." "No." She said I never really came back to her. "I don't know." "I do." I said nothing. Adrian continued. "After you left, the house was quiet. I thought I liked quiet." I listened. "The coffee you used to set out didn't appear by itself. At dinners with clients, you always remembered their wives' names. My mother called asking about Aunt Patricia's birthday gift because you handled it for 3 years. I looked for the health insurance folder and had no idea where it was." I laughed softly. "Are you calling to thank me for being your personal assistant?" "No." "Then what?" "I started missing things that had no practical use to me." His voice dropped. "The way you sat on the kitchen island reading, the way you sang the wrong lyrics in the car, the shoes you always left at the bottom of the stairs that annoyed me, the porch light you left on when I came home late." I closed my eyes. That was what I had wanted to hear years ago, not what I did for him. "Me," Adrian said. "I love you." 3 years I had waited. 3 months I no longer needed it. I asked, "Since when?" "I don't know." "That's the problem. I know now." "I believe you." He exhaled. I said, "But I'm not coming back." Silence. "Is there already someone else?" "No." "Then why won't you give us another chance?" "Because a chance does not exist only when you finally become ready. I can fix this." "You can fix yourself. You cannot fix 3 years of me." "You said you loved me." "I did." "There's nothing left?" I thought. "There are memories. Regret. A part of me that hopes you live well. But I do not want to be your wife anymore." Adrian breathed hard. "How did you let go so quickly?" "I didn't let go in 3 months. I let go every time I sat beside you and realized you were somewhere else." He said nothing. I ended with, "Don't turn your regret into another obligation for me." I hung up. My hand shook. Not because I wanted to go back, because closing a door still hurt even when you were the one closing it. 2 weeks later, Celeste came to the lobby of Meridian Crest. She looked tired. "Adrian broke up with me." "I know. He says he loves you." I did not answer. Celeste laughed bitterly. "You won." "I wasn't competing. You always say that." "Because it's true. He divorced you for me. Now all you have to do is appear beside Julian, and he runs back. I don't make Adrian run anywhere." She looked at me. "I've loved him since college." "I know. Could you stop giving him hope?" I almost felt sorry for her. "Celeste, I already turned him down." She froze. "You turned him down?" "Yes." "Then why does he still—" "I don't manage my ex-husband's emotions." Celeste lowered her eyes. I said, "If you want to be with Adrian, talk to him. But don't come asking me to hand him over. He is not an object I own." She looked up. "You really don't want him anymore?" "I don't want to go back." Something both relieved and painful moved across her face. Before leaving, Celeste said, "I used to think you had nothing except being his wife." I answered, "For a while, I thought almost the same thing." She was quiet. "I'm sorry." I nodded. Not everyone who hurts you needs to be destroyed. Sometimes the consequence is simply having to live with the fact that what they fought to win was never what they imagined. Julian never asked me about Adrian. He knew the decree was final because the legal team updated our conflict file. One evening after a construction budget meeting, he stayed behind after everyone else left. "There's something unrelated to the project," he said. "I'm starting to worry." "You should." I closed my laptop. Julian leaned against the chair. "I want to take you to dinner." "Business?" "No." I looked at him. He continued immediately. "If the answer is no, tomorrow morning we still argue about cost escalation like normal." "Why now?" "Because your divorce is final. Asking before that would have been wrong. And because I don't want you finding out later that I used the project as an excuse to stay close to you." The bluntness left me with very little room to defend myself. "I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm not asking for a relationship." "Julian, one dinner, outside work hours, no deck." I smiled. "You know how to sell a narrow scope. I'm in development." I thought about it. "Fine." Our first dinner was at a small restaurant in Capitol Hill. No private room, no expensive champagne. Julian told me his father once bankrupted a small construction business before rebuilding from scratch. I told him about the time Alexander was followed as a child. A van had tracked the school car. The driver noticed. No kidnapping actually happened, but afterward, my father changed the way our entire family lived. No press photographs, no foundation profiles, no public home address, no school records tied to the family name. I said, "Adrian knew that happened, but I never explained Meridian Crest's ownership structure. I thought that proved he wasn't interested in money." Julian said. "Maybe it only proved that the two of you were very good at avoiding difficult conversations." I looked at him. "Do you need to be right all the time?" "About 70%. I laughed. After dinner, he walked me to my car. No kiss, no invitation upstairs. Only, "Tomorrow, 8:30, contractor change order." I know. Don't concede anything because of dinner. I was planning to increase Mercer's share. Excellent. From then on, Julian pursued me in the literal sense. No standing outside my home, no hundreds of roses. He invited me hiking when our schedules allowed, to a Mariners game with Alexander, to an Ethiopian restaurant after I mentioned I had never tried one. I declined several invitations. He said okay. When we began seeing each other regularly, I informed General Counsel myself. Meridian Crest and Mercer updated the conflict disclosure. Material JV decisions went through a committee with independent members. Julian was mildly annoyed. The contract was signed before we started dating. I know. You think I'm going to ask for favors? No. I think other people are entitled to ask whether you did. He looked at me, then signed. I hate it when you're right. That's the other 30%. The project took a serious hit in month 7. Northline's credit outlook was downgraded after weak earnings. The lender demanded additional guarantees or more pre-leasing. Construction pricing kept rising. The board asked, "Should we stop phase 1 before breaking ground?" I could not say. We've already gone this far. That was sunk cost thinking. The team ran 3 scenarios. 1. Proceed at full scale. 2. Reduce square footage by 15%. 3. Stop. Sell the entitled land and package. Julian favored option 2. At first, I favored 1. We argued for nearly a week. Not at dinner, not at home, in conference rooms. Eventually, the data showed Julian was right. If we built full Phase 1, debt service coverage became too thin. I changed my recommendation. Alexander asked, "You're not worried the board will think Mercer is leading you?" "I'm more worried they'll know I kept a bad position just to prove I don't listen to my boyfriend." We presented option 2. The board approved it. Northline accepted the smaller footprint with an expansion option. The project avoided nearly $18 million in initial cost. I learned something my old marriage had never taught me. Changing your mind because of evidence is not losing. 9 months after groundbreaking, my father called me upstairs. A packet from Family Trust Council sat on his desk. Caldwell Family Voting Trust. I sat. "You're not dead yet." "Thank you for noticing. Why am I seeing this? Succession cannot wait until I die." Alexander already knew. My father said, "The trust holds the controlling interest in Meridian Crest. Under the old structure, both of you are remainder beneficiaries, but my voting control continues until transfer or incapacity." I know the beneficiary piece. You haven't seen the amendment. I looked at him. "You're transferring voting control?" "Not all at once." He pulled out a governance chart. "Alexander remains CEO. I want you to become President of Development and Investments once Cascadia South reaches construction financing close and 50% pre-lease. After that, both of you join the succession committee with independent directors." "So, who is the heir?" My father frowned. "This company is not a kingdom. There is no throne." Alexander laughed. My father continued, "Your brother is stronger in operations and capital markets. You are stronger in development strategy. I do not want one person controlling every decision." I looked at the pages. As a child, I had imagined inheritance as something simple. A father got older. A child stepped up. In reality, trusts, voting rights, board seats, tax structures, independent directors, performance conditions. Not romantic, but credible. "Why now?" I asked. My father said, "Because you proved something. Cascadia? It isn't finished." He looked at me. "When the investment committee asked you to close the land early, you accepted that we might lose a $450,000 option fee instead of protecting your ego with a bad deal." I stayed quiet. "I don't need you to win every deal," he said. "I need to know you can protect the company even when that decision makes you look like you failed." I signed an acknowledgement that I had received the documents. Not an inheritance certificate, just the first step. That evening, I told Julian. He raised his glass. "So now I'm dating someone more dangerous. I don't have voting control yet. You were already dangerous." "I'm serious. So am I." He set down the glass. "Eleanor, I don't care about your trust. Everyone says that." "Fine. I care a little because it affects conflict disclosure." I laughed. Julian took my hand. "I love you." I went quiet. Not because I felt nothing, because for the first time, I wanted my answer to come from somewhere other than fear of losing the person in front of me. "I can't say it back yet." Julian nodded. "Okay." "You're not disappointed?" "I am." I looked at him. He smiled. "You want me to lie?" "I'm disappointed, but I don't need you to say it before you mean it." I squeezed his hand. "Thank you." New love did not arrive as a rescue. It arrived as a person who could hear the word "not yet" without turning it into a negotiation. 18 months after I pulled my suitcase out of Adrian's house, Cascadia South completed the shells of its first 2 buildings. 3 weeks behind the revised schedule. It was not a perfect story. One subcontractor staged a short strike. Electrical equipment arrived late. A drainage item had to be corrected after inspection. We used the schedule contingency. Northline moved into Phase 1 after county sign-off. 2 smaller tenants signed leases for light manufacturing space. Pre-leasing exceeded 60%. Debt financing closed. The required utility upgrade was completed. Phase 1 wetland mitigation passed county review. Those numbers were less exciting than a headline saying, "Abandoned wife returns home to inherit an empire." But those numbers were what caused the board to vote me in as president of development and investments. My father remained executive chair. Alexander remained CEO. I did not replace him. The family voting trust began transferring part of its voting authority through a multi-year succession process. The family's wealth was too large and too structurally complex to be reduced to one number called the inheritance. There were operating company interests, trust assets, real estate, investments, things that would move across generations through governance, tax planning, and law. But for the first time, I officially stood again inside the structure I had once walked away from. Meridian Crest held a small event at Cascadia South when Northline began operations. No red carpet. There were hard hats. County officials, union representatives, lenders, tenants. A business reporter asked, "Ms. Caldwell, some people say your return was easy because you are Richard Caldwell's daughter. What do you say to that?" I knew the question was coming. "I was born with enormous advantages," I said. "A strong education, access to capital, a network, and a family willing to give me a second chance. I'm not going to pretend I'm self-made." "Then where does your own ability show?" "I don't think I should grade myself. Look at the underwriting, tenant retention, budget, financing, and operating performance. If the numbers are bad, my relatives do not make them good." "Mercer Infrastructure is run by Julian Mercer. Did your personal relationship affect the deal?" "The JV was signed before we began dating. When the relationship changed, both companies updated conflict disclosures and routed material decisions through independent review." Julian stood several yards away. He did not interrupt, did not smile as if he had rescued me from a difficult question. I answered for myself. That evening, my father watched the clip on his tablet. "You didn't need to say privilege that many times," my mother said. She was right. Alexander said, "PR is just happy Ellie didn't claim she started in a garage." I threw a napkin at him. By then, Adrian and I almost never spoke. He sold the old house after a year. I knew because Melissa forwarded a notice connected to a few documents that still carried my name. Celeste moved to New York. I did not know whether she and Adrian ever got back together. I did not ask. Once, I ran into Adrian in an airport lounge. He looked well. We talked for 10 minutes. "The project is finished?" he asked. "Phase 1. I read the article. Thank you. You and Julian? Still together." Adrian nodded. No performance of heartbreak. No request for another chance. After a while, he said, "I used to think that if you succeeded after the divorce, I'd feel like I had lost something. I think you lost a marriage." "Yes, but now I understand your success was not the thing I lost. It was something you went back and reclaimed." I looked at him. "That's a good line." I learned slowly. "But you learn." The boarding announcement called his flight. Adrian stood. "Eleanor." "Yes?" "I really do hope you're happy." This time, I believed him. "I hope you are too." That was closure. Not him kneeling. Not Celeste being ruined. Not the Cole family going bankrupt. Just two people finally looking at a finished marriage without needing to defeat each other. I did not marry Julian immediately either. After he told me he loved me, It took almost 4 months before I said it back. It did not happen in Paris. Not on a yacht. We were at Home Depot buying shelf brackets for a condo I had purchased with my own money. Julian was holding 2 types of screws. Which one? I looked at him and suddenly thought about the man who had sat beside me during investment committee prep, argued with me over debt coverage, stayed silent when I needed silence, and never once asked me to become smaller so he could feel larger. "I love you," I said. Julian froze in the hardware aisle. "You picked now?" "I couldn't schedule it." He put down the box of screws. "Don't take it back." "I won't." He kissed me between shelves of wall anchors. An employee walked past, pretending not to see. It was the most romantic confession I had ever had. A year later, Julian proposed. No event. No drone. He placed the ring box beside a set of documents we were reading at the kitchen table. "I have a proposal that doesn't need independent committee approval." I looked at the box. Terms? Lifetime. Mutual consent. No controlling interest. Terrible. Exit clause? Divorce law. I laughed. Then he became serious. "Eleanor, marry me." After my first marriage, I had thought I would be afraid of that question. I wasn't. Because this time, the question in my head was not, "Does this person love me enough for me to give up my life?" It was, "Do I want to build a life with this person while still remaining myself?" Yes. Before the wedding, we signed a prenup. Julian suggested it. We each had separate counsel. Business interests remained separate. Assets created jointly after marriage had clear rules. Nobody said paperwork ruined love. I had learned that documents were not what ruined love. Avoiding necessary conversations in the name of love did. My mother cried at the wedding. Alexander gave a speech that was too long. My father told Julian, "She's difficult." Julian replied, "I know." I elbowed both of them. Nobody in my family said, "At least you finally found someone better than Adrian." Julian was not a prize for getting divorced. Adrian was not a monster who needed to be erased. My first marriage failed because I loved someone who did not love me the same way, and I tried to use sacrifice to change the truth. After divorce, the biggest thing I reclaimed was not Meridian Crest. Not the family trust, not the equity. I reclaimed the part of my life I had once set down. Work, decision-making, my relationship with my parents and brother, the ability to love without making love my entire identity. I still had privilege. I was still Richard Caldwell's daughter. One day, I would inherit assets most people would never come close to touching. I did not pretend that did not matter. But wealth only opened a door. It could not walk through an investment committee for me, could not negotiate a tenant lease, could not admit when Julian was right, could not say no to Adrian, could not say not yet to Julian, could not decide how I would marry the second time. On New Year's Eve, 2 years after Adrian placed the divorce papers in front of me, I stood on the balcony of my condo watching fireworks over Lake Washington. Julian was in the kitchen opening champagne. My phone showed a message from Alexander. "Board package for Monday attached. Don't pretend you're on vacation." I replied, "Happy New Year to you too." My mother texted, "Don't work tonight." My father texted, "See page 42. I laughed. 2 years earlier, I had left a house carrying 1 suitcase and believed my life had collapsed. It had not. It had only moved back to the right center. I had spent almost 8 years loving Adrian Cole. 3 years trying to turn our marriage into something it had never been. Then one night walking away. The hardest part was not divorce. It was not making the Cole family discover how wealthy I really was. Wealth had never been the revenge. The only revenge worth anything was reaching the day when other people finally saw my value and realizing I no longer needed their eyes to confirm it. I did not become valuable when Adrian regretted losing me. I did not become valuable when Julian loved me. I did not become valuable when my father handed me the succession documents. That value had been there from the beginning. It simply took me far too long to come home and claim it.